food prices going up because of tariffs? I'm reading this thing from the Tax Foundation, and they have this graph that said 74% of food imports are subject to tariffs. It will be tariffed under Trump's tariff bill. And of course, all the idiots will go out. I'm trying not to say mean words, but I can't help it because these people just, I don't know. They'll say, oh, that shows you 74% of Trump's food imports will be subject to Trump's tariffs. So isn't then the logical question is how much of our food that we consume is actually imported? So the Tax Foundation has this nifty chart that says this circle chart that has 163 billion of food imports subject to Trump's tariffs. 53 billion of food imports are not subject to Trump's tariffs. All right, so they say, oh my goodness, that's a lot of food that's subject to Trump's tariffs. How much food do we actually consume on an annual basis? Well, I can tell you what it was in 2023. It's $2.157 trillion. So if $163 billion is going to be tariffed, and we consume $2.157 trillion, that means $163 billion of our food is going to be subject to tariffs, which is all of 6%. And you're going to tell me that's going to cause mass inflation? And the biggest 5 components of that tariff goods are cooked meal. What they say? That's cooked meal. I think it was cooked meals, beer, liqueur, whatever the hell that is, spirits, fish, and some other thing. I can't remember what it was. But it was like cooked goods or something like that. Beer, liqueur, fish, and I was like, so Americans, we don't know how to cook, we don't know how to make beer, and we don't know how to fish? I mean, jeez. Now, frankly, at the end of the day, I am pro-tariff. I don't know if we should be tariffing bananas. I'm not even sure bananas are being tariffed. I think they are, actually. You know, we do import a crap load of bananas, and there's really not a great place to be able to raise them, at least in the 48. It's just not. So we've been importing bananas as far as we can, basically as long as the country's been alive. So, you know, should we put a tariff on imported bananas? That doesn't bother me so much. But, you know, at the end of the day, bananas do compete for homegrown foods, oranges, apples, and things like that. It's just fact. So, I mean, this is the issue. People say, oh, you can't make bananas in America. And Hawaii, you probably can make a little bit, but it's just not very much. Not enough to satisfy the demand. Well, why is the demand so high? Probably because they're cheap from cost of living, from cheap labor in Costa Rica and things of this nature. Who knows what else? I don't know. Does Dole grow bananas still with essentially slave labor, allegedly? I don't know. But I mean, just like that's one of the reasons bananas are so cheap. So if a banana is so cheap, an orange is more expensive because an orange is produced domestically, bananas are produced foreign. So bananas are essentially taking taking market share from orange producers. That's just a fact. You know, nectarines, peaches, anything you can grow at home because bananas are cheaper. So that in of itself doesn't bother me. Yeah, should they put import tariffs on things we can't produce? Not necessarily, but I get the point. Part 2 of that is saying, oh, they're going to put import tariffs on Brazilian coffee. So if you like Brazilian coffee, you're going to have to pay 15% more. Oh, well, I mean, that sucks. And again, I don't know if we can grow coffee beans in the United States. I don't know. But if Brazilian coffee is a cost to do business, and you want to continue to drink Brazilian coffee, you're going to pay a little bit more, and we're going to get more money. It will be a tax on you to buy Brazilian coffee. There are substitutes for other coffee that's not from Brazil with a commie government and stuff like that. Again, I don't know the whole perspective of coffee, but again, if we can't produce coffee, then yeah, you probably don't want to put tariffs on it unless we can produce coffee, like pineapples. We can absolutely produce pineapples in Hawaii. We can produce coffee. If we can, I don't know. But if we have industries that can produce these things, we should give default preference to our domestic industries. If that's bananas, if that's pineapples, if that's coffee, we should. If we can't, Should we put tariffs on the entirety of it? No, we want to put tariffs on countries that aren't treating us good. That's just a fact, treating us well. So if Brazil is going to be scumbags, which they are, their government's a scumbag, we should say we're going to tariff your products. Oh, but that's going to put a tax on people like Brazilian coffee. All right, maybe they can drink El Salvadorian coffee, Honduran coffee, Peruvian coffee. I don't know. American grown coffee. I just don't know. But that doesn't bother me so much. At the end of the day, though, 6% of our food consumption is subject to tariffs now. Or at least the new tariffs. That's really going to make friggin' prices on food go up. I mean, the thing is just so stupid. And you can make your own beer. Shocking, I know. Shocking as it may be, but you can make your own beer. You can do your own fishing. Shocking as it may be. Shocking, I know. You can actually make your own cooked goods. It's not cooked. I'm not sure what the word is. There's another for good. I just can't remember. Believe it or not. But that's going to cost more. Will it cost more? Will it? I don't know. Prepared goods. That's what it was. Prepared goods. You can do all this stuff. You can, but Josh, it takes more time and and money that I want to spend on tattoos. I gotta get a new tattoo, don't you know? Well, that's the price you gotta pay. My man, this kind of Marxist scholar who I'm not sure he's a Marxist, but he had written a pretty big piece on Karl Marx. He said, and this was actually quite phenomenal. He was talking about the old days of right around essentially saying the artisans that we had in working class artisans and whatnot, and how the republicanism with a small r basically said, hey, sometimes the price of independence is higher cost, is what he said. And I thought that was actually very, very interesting. He said a lot of the people, the commercial endeavors will say this isn't a very efficient use of our time, i.e. talk about like free trade and things like regulation and stuff. And he said, yeah, but some of the artisans, the working people who literally work with their hands, the master tradesmen stuff, they say, yeah, less efficiency might be the price, or is the price of independence. And I thought that's very interesting. Sometimes the price of independence from foreign nations is you have to pay a little bit more. And that, you can say that sucks and all that day long, but independence isn't free. It's not free. You don't just get free trade, free labor, and independence. At some point, something's got to give. And you can't import your way to continued prosperity. It doesn't work like that. At some point, you got to make stuff. And if that means you got to pay a little bit more price for Brazilian coffee or bananas from cheap labor in Costa Rica, hey, man, that's what we're going to have to do. Especially if that leads to more of a market share for domestic produced goods like oranges and stuff. So anyway, pound sand tax foundation. I like the tax foundation. But this is just incredibly misleading stuff. Oh my goodness, 74% of imported food is going to subject to Trump's tariffs. I'm like, okay, but that's just the imported food part of it. And what consists of that imported food part of it? All right, God bless. Love your thoughts. We'll see you.